What would you think if I told you that the greatest fear society has for a woman is not that she will be left alone, but that she will learn to thrive there? What if I told you that the state of being a woman, unmirrored by a masculine gaze, unburdened by the psychic weight of a partner, unlocks a psychological state so potent, so self-contained, that it is by its very nature a threat to the established order of things? This state is not one of sadness or lack. It is one of terrifying and absolute sovereignty. Society hands a woman a script from birth. It is a story of connection, of partnership, of completion through another. She is the lock, waiting for a key. She is the vessel, waiting to be filled. Her value is often measured by her attachments as a daughter, a partner, a mother. The collective unconscious reinforces this narrative through myths, fairy tales, and cultural expectations. To be alone is to have failed the narrative. It is seen as a liminal space, a temporary and unfortunate waiting room, not a destination. But this is the great deception. That waiting room is, in fact, an alchemical chamber. The solitude is the crucible. When a woman first finds herself truly alone, not merely between partners, but in a state of deep, intentional solitude, the first thing she experiences is not freedom. It is silence, is deafening. In this void, the persona she has carefully constructed, the mask of the good partner, the agreeable girlfriend, the supportive wife, begins to crack and fall away. As the Stoics understood, the mass of humanity is addicted to things outside their control, the opinions of others, the love of another, the stability of external structures. To be stripped of these is to be forced into a radical relationship with one's own ruling faculty. A woman in this state must confront a terrifying question. Without anyone to reflect my image back at me, who am I? She is standing at the edge of her own psychic wilderness, and she has two choices. Run back to the familiar comfort of another's world, or step into the darkness and discover what monstrous beautiful things have been growing there in secret. This psychological state isn't unlocked with a key. It is earned through a descent into the self that society tells you to fear most. This persona was built for an audience of two. Without its audience, it has no purpose. It dies. This death of the ego persona is the first terror, because what is left when the mask is gone? What's left is everything she had previously outsourced, suppressed, or projected. The silence is suddenly filled with the ghosts of her unlived selves, the anger she swallowed to keep the peace, the ambition she downplayed to not seem intimidating, the wild intuitive wisdom she silenced to be more rational. It all comes rushing back into the vacuum. You are told this space is emptiness, but it is in fact violently full. It is the confrontation with the raw, unmediated self. There is no one to blame for her moods, no one to distract her from her anxieties, no one to provide the external validation that her ego has come to crave like a drug. She is forced, for the first time, to be the sole source of her own regulation, her own comfort, and her own meaning. This is the abyss. She who chooses to step into that psychic wilderness finds that her senses, long dulled by the noise of another's presence, begin to sharpen. The world takes on a new texture. This is the first stage of unlocking the sovereign psyche. It is a period of brutal, unflinching honesty. Without a partner to serve as a mirror, she becomes her own. And the reflection she sees is not one, but many. She is a fractured goddess, a collection of selves she never allowed to coexist. Here, in the stark privacy of her own mind, she must meet them. The first self she meets is often her rage. In her partnered life, this rage was an inconvenience, a dangerous spark to be extinguished before it burned the fragile bridge of connection. It was labeled hysteria, irrationality, a hormonal imbalance. She learned to swallow it, to coat it in apologetic tears. But here, alone, the rage rises, and it is pure, clarifying, and righteous. It is the accumulated fury of 1,000 tiny compromises. 1,000 moments of being misunderstood, 1,000 instances of self-betrayal. You stop seeing your anger as a flaw and begin to recognize it as a compass, a sacred instrument pointing directly to every place your boundaries have been violated, primarily by yourself. It is a cleansing fire, burning away the deference and the need to be nice. This is terrifying because a woman in full possession of her righteous anger is a woman who can no longer be easily controlled. Next, she meets her ambition, a creature she may have kept starved in a cage. She was taught that to be too ambitious was to be unlovable, to be intimidating. She may have shrunk her own dreams to fit inside someone else's. Alone, this creature of ambition stretches its limbs. It is hungry. It demands to build, to create, to achieve, not for external praise, but for the sheer electric joy of its own expansion. You stop asking for permission to want more. The desire for a career, for art, for a life of intellectual or spiritual significance ceases. To be a secondary plot point in a romance and becomes the central epic of your existence? This is terrifying, because a woman fueled by her own unadulterated ambition is a woman who builds her own world. And she may not leave a door for anyone who demands she keep it small. This is the beginning of true shadow work. It is the process of reclaiming the disowned parts of the self. Carl Jung taught that the shadow contains not just our vices, but our most potent, undeveloped strengths. The woman alone learns that her so-called vices were often virtues in exile. Her stubbornness was her integrity. Her sensitivity was her intuitive intelligence. Her coldness was her capacity for discerning judgment. She begins the arduous process of alchemizing her personal demons into allies. She is integrating her animus, her own internal masculine, becoming the architect of her own mind, the warrior who defends her own boundaries, the king who rules her own inner kingdom. She stops looking for a man to be these things for her, because she is becoming them for herself. It is no longer the fear of being alone. It is the dawning, awesome, and deeply unsettling fear of her own power. This dawning fear of her own power is the final gate. Once she passes through it, she enters the state of psychological sovereignty. Before, she may have operated with a frequency of seeking approval, seeking connection, seeking completion. It was an outward-flowing energy, constantly scanning the environment for a response, for a reflection. Now her energy turns inward. It is a state of radiant self-containment, like a star that generates its own light and heat, no longer needing to orbit a brighter sun. You find that you stop performing. The subtle, lifelong habit of adjusting your personality, your laugh, your opinions, to be more palatable, more desirable to the masculine, simply withers and dies. You no longer see yourself through the eyes of a potential partner. You see yourself through the eyes of your own soul, your own highest self. And this is a gaze of such unconditional acceptance that the judgment of the outside world becomes irrelevant. The terror, which was once an internal experience of the void and the shadow, now begins to be projected onto her from the outside world. For the woman who has alchemized her demons and integrated her power is a profoundly unsettling figure. She has completed a journey that most people, men and women alike, dare not even begin. Her entire energetic signature changes. This is where the principles of Stoicism cease to be an intellectual exercise and become a lived reality. She masters the dichotomy of control. She understands, on a cellular level, that the only things within her power are her own thoughts, judgments, and actions. The things that once would have sent her into a spiral of anxiety, a delayed text message, a vague comment, a shift in his mood are now met with a profound and unshakable calm. Her peace is no longer a conditional state, gifted to her by a partner's good behavior. It is an internal fortress, built stone by stone through her own inner work. She cannot be baited with jealousy, provoked by drama, or manipulated by the threat of withdrawal. The old levers of control are useless. She has exited the game. The man who expects to find a reactive, emotional creature he can manage finds instead a placid lake, can throw stones. But all he will do is create temporary ripples on a surface that quickly returns to a state of perfect reflective stillness. This stillness, this peace, is her ultimate power, and it is the most terrifying quality of all. Because a woman who cannot be emotionally manipulated is a woman who is truly, undeniably free. The feelings of others, the state of a man's ego, the opinions of society, these are externals, to be observed with the calm, detached curiosity of a scientist observing weather patterns. They are not her. They cannot touch her. You stop trying to manage a man's emotions or decode his silences. You realize you are not responsible for his inner world, only for the integrity of your own. This detachment is not coldness. It is the highest form of respect. It respects his sovereignty by refusing to interfere with it, and it fiercely protects her own. A woman in this state becomes terrifyingly unbothered. Her newfound peace creates a gravitational field, and its effects on the external world are immediate and profound. This is where the true test of her unlocked state begins, not in the silence of her own home, but in her encounters with the masculine. Man approaches this sovereign woman, and a silent psychic transaction occurs in seconds. He is on an unconscious level, searching for a familiar dynamic, a lock for which he might be the key. He searches for a wound he can heal, a problem he can solve, a void he can fill. It is the fundamental script of masculine purpose in the old paradigm, to provide, protect, or complete, but he finds none of it. Her wholeness is a smooth, seamless surface. There is no purchase for his ego's hooks. This is deeply disorienting for a man whose identity is built upon being needed. He will try the old key's flattery promises, displays of status, feigned vulnerability, and find that none of them fit the lock. Flattery falls flat because her self-worth is generated internally. Promises of a future are uninteresting because her present is already full. Status is irrelevant because she has built her own kingdom. Your very presence becomes a walking, breathing boundary. You do not need to speak your standards, your energy radiates them. You become a filter. And this filter ruthlessly sorts the men she meets into two distinct categories. First, there is the undeveloped man, whose ego is fragile and whose sense of self is externally derived. He will experience her sovereignty as a personal attack. Her self-containment feels like rejection. Her peace feels like arrogance. Her lack of need feels like a judgment upon his own masculinity. His ego, facing a power it cannot comprehend or dominate, launches an immune response. He will label her. She is cold, intimidating, difficult, a bitch. These labels are not descriptions of her. They are confessions of his own inadequacy. They are attempts to pathologize her power to soothe his own threatened sense of self. He will then either retreat in confusion or attempt to belittle her, to bring her down to a level where his ego feels safe again. You will watch this happen not with anger or sadness, but with the dispassionate clarity of a diagnostician. You see the symptom and understand the cause. Then there's the second type of man. He is rare, for he is a man who has embarked upon his own journey of individuation. He has wrestled with his own shadow and is working to integrate his own soul. When this man encounters the sovereign woman, he does not feel threatened, feels a deep soul-level recognition. He is not looking for a void to fill. He is looking for another whole soul to dance with. He doesn't see her peace as arrogance. He sees it as the hard-won spoils of a war he himself is fighting. He doesn't need her to need him. His attraction is not based on dependency, but on admiration. He is drawn to the light she generates because he is busy building his own. This is not the frantic, needy grasp of two half-souls trying to become one. It is the calm, respectful nod between two sovereigns, Ironically, the solitude she embraced to heal from the world has become the very thing that prepares her for the only kind of connection that is no longer a compromise, but an expansion. This recognition between two sovereign souls is the final temptation. It is the temptation to believe that the journey's end is a partnership, however evolved. But the woman who has passed through the preceding gates of fire is destined for one last, ultimate liberation. Her happiness ceases to be an event and becomes a climate. She embodies the Stoic ideal of amor fatia, love of her fate. She greets every sunrise with a profound sense of gratitude, whether a hand is holding hers or not, because the warmth she feels comes from within. Her joy is not a fragile thing dependent on external circumstances. It is a deep, underground river fed by the constant springs of self-knowledge and self-possession. The final terror, therefore, is the terror of absolute freedom. It is the realization that you are utterly and completely responsible for your own fulfillment. She comes to realize that even this desire for a conscious equal, as beautiful and worthy as it is another form of looking outward for a reflection. The final stage of unlocking the sovereign psyche is to gently let go of this, too. Her solitude ceases to be a training ground for a relationship. It becomes the destination in and of itself. Her life is no longer a preparation for a guest who may or may not arrive. Her life is the feast. She who has reached the shore is no longer looking out at the sea for a returning ship. You understand that the word alone has been a mistranslation all along. It does not mean lonely. It means all one.
Oh.
You have gathered all the fractured parts of yourself, the shadow and the light, the masculine and the feminine, the warrior and the mystic hand, integrated them into a seamless whole. A woman who needs nothing from the world can't be controlled by it. A woman who finds her validation, her purpose, and her love from within has peacefully, quietly seceded from the entire system of external reward and punishment. She is not bitter, she is not angry, she is not wounded, she is free. She has become a self-sustaining ecosystem, a universe unto herself. She may choose to allow another into her world, to share in its beauty, but his presence is an expansion, not a foundation. Her life is not a story about finding love. It is a story about being love. And from this state of profound inner wealth, all choices are made with effortless clarity. Your life is no longer a search for a center, because you are the center. Love ceases to be a transaction, something you get from another, and becomes the very atmosphere you breathe. It is an energy you generate, a state of being you inhabit and radiate outward. Without condition or the need for reciprocation, you love the world from a place of fullness, not from a place of lack. This is the psychological state that is so terrifying to a world built on dependency.